Saint-Cyrin, she eventually became known as the mistress of Jansenism, a rigorous theological school that was later condemned by the Church. Port-Royal was known as the center of Jansenism. The Paris monastery of Port-Royal has been partially preserved and is part of the present hospital of the Maternity. After a long stay, November 6, 1618 to September 13, 1619, Francis left Paris with the princely couple. When the group reached the city of Tours, about 135 miles southwest of Paris, Monseigneur Henri de Gondi, Cardinal and Bishop of Paris, with the agreement of the king, offered Francis the opportunity of becoming his coadjutor, and eventually Cardinal and Bishop of Paris. The Cardinal points to a map of the city of Paris, showing the Cathedral of Notre Dame on an island in the midst of the Seine. Francis is shown with his hand signaling no. He somewhat humorously objects that he had married a poor wife, his Diocese of Geneva, in exile in Annecy, and didn't think he ought to exchange her for a rich one, Paris. Christine went to Turin with her new husband. She became very close to her people. This is a street scene in Turin. Francis, Jane, and Vincent were examples of the kind of saint produced by the Counter-Reformation or Catholic Reformation. A stained glass window in the Basilica of the Sisters of the Visitation in Annecy, where both Jane and Francis are buried, depicts Vincent de Paul saying Mass for Jane and Francis after their deaths. He had a vision of two fiery globes rising to join themselves with a larger globe. He understood this as a sign that both were already united with God in heaven. End of video 7. Produced by DeSales University. Directed and narrated by A. Robert McGilvray, Oblate of St. Francis de Sales. Video 8, The Dream of Retirement, The Death of Love. In this video, we will follow Francis de Sales' final experiences in Annecy, Terroir, Avignon, and Lyon. Chapter 15, When a Missionary Dreams of a Hermitage. Francis had just returned to Annecy from his diplomatic mission to Paris to gain the hand in marriage of Christine of France for the Duke of Savoy's son, when he was caught up again in the pressures of daily activities. This painting from the Chateau of Torrent depicts a Francis who was worn out. He had attracted many devout men and women who wanted spiritual direction. The number of his new monasteries was increasing. While in Paris from 1618 to 1619, on the diplomatic mission for the Duke of Savoy, Francis had considered founding a monastery there. Now Francis was back in Annecy, and Jane de Chantal was in Paris, actually setting up the monastery. For 2 years, Jane and the sisters moved from one site to another. They suffered from cold and inadequate lodging. Francis was much concerned about them. He wrote to Jane often. In spite of it all, many women joined their institute. Finally, Jane found a place on the right bank of the Seine, the Rive Droite, in the Marais area, near the place of the Bastille. One day the convent would stretch from the walls of the Bastille in a westward direction along the Rue Saint-Antoine to the Rue du Petit Musc, then southward to the Rue de la Cerisier, and then back to the Bastille. Their first convent would be in the Zamet residence in the Rue du Petit Musc, numbers 26 to 30, just off the Rue Saint-Antoine. When first considering it, they thought the residence was too beautiful, too luxurious, too expensive. When they told Francis, he said that it seemed to him that the only problem with it was that it was too beautiful, and that in the absence of one that was just beautiful enough, they would have to settle for one that was too beautiful. Mademoiselle Lhuillier had just joined them. She brought a sizable dowry, and it served very well to cover the cost of the building. In 1632, after Francis' death, Jane would have the architect François Mansart build a chapel in what is now the corner of Rue Saint-Antoine and Rue Castex. The intersection and the dome of this chapel can be seen on this map. This chapel would eventually be the model for the magnificent chapel of Val-de-Grâce, built by Anne of Austria, and Les Invalides, which is today a beautiful hospital in Paris for wounded military veterans. Today this chapel is all that remains of a huge convent. All but it was destroyed in the French Revolution in 1796. In 1803, this chapel was given to the Protestant Reformed Church and remains theirs today. There are, however, 2 active monasteries of the Visitation in Paris today that can be considered its successors. Both are on the left bank of the Seine, both near the Jardin de Luxembourg, one at 68 Avenue d'Enfer Rochereau, the other at 110 Rue de Vaugirard. Francis preached the Advent and Lenten sermons in Annecy in 1619 and 1620. He gave conferences to the Visitandines and had to deal with the lack of discipline in some of the monasteries of other orders in his diocese. He admitted to his coadjutor or successor, his brother, Jean-François de Sales, that he was weary. He looked forward to giving his diocese over to his brother. Here is Jean-François de Sales' coat of arms. It is similar to Francis' own. When the new bride, Princess Christine of Turin, asked Rome to make Jean-François de Sales her official chaplain, Francis saw it as a relief. At least he would be relieved of the duties of chaplain to the Duke. Here is Jean-François de Sales' diploma of approbation from Rome as chaplain. It is found in the museum of the Chateau of Torrent. It is the diploma for the chaplain of Princess Christine, daughter of Henry IV, King of France, granted to Jean-François de Sales.